Are you an entrepreneur or ready to become a boss? Welcome to Hawaii Boss, the business podcast made in Hawaii, where you will hear from island movers and shakers on who they are and their impact on our state. And now, step into the office of your host for Hawaii Boss, David Pettyjohn.
And we are live. Aloha, Hawaii Boss team. I have a question for you today, a little bit different. Have you guys ever seen Charlie and the Chocolate Factory? How about Chitty Chitty Bang Bang with those whistling treats? Anything like that? Or how about if you've been walking through the airport and need a last minute gift? Am I ringing a bell here? I don't know if we can call him the Candyman, but we'll see once we get in the office over here. We've gone all the way down to the Hawaiian host group president and CEO's office. We're here with Mr. Ed Schultz. Ed, aloha. Thanks for letting the Hawaii Boss crew into your office, and welcome.
Awesome. Aloha. Thank you for having me.
Hey, no, this is really cool. I don't know, working as a CEO of it's more than a candy company, but it's got a little bit of a Hawaiian host has that is known for that. Tell us about.
Absolutely. We love being a chocolate company, and it's good fun. I mean, you always got snacks around and tasty treats around the office. So, we try to watch our weight. That's probably the number one goal at the office. So,
how does a guy get to be, the Candyman? I don't know if they have any nicknames for you, but how does someone come up, and where does a business path lead to this kind of position?
Yeah, so for me, it was, I've been in Hawaii involved in what I would call sort of agriculture to consumer products business for a decade in the coffee business when I think the board of directors of Hawaiian Host had reached out to see if I could help them on the board of directors and figure out, I had no intention of becoming the Candyman. I was just going to be, one of the advisors to the Candyman, and I think I kept, one of the traits as a great leader is you're always asking, really good questions.
Sure.
And I felt like I asked apparently too many good questions at board meetings because I quickly found myself in the CEO seat. So.
Well, that happens as you ask the right questions. You start getting maybe zero answers or some answers, and you start probing and finding out what's really happening, and that's interesting. So again, as you go back a little bit further than that, you were working in Kona, but did you come up as this sort of a manufacturing a little bit, agriculture? What is your background?
Yeah, so I've been all over the place in terms of what I think. As long as to me you're ultimately curious, and I think that's what makes great leaders, great entrepreneurs, to be ultimately curious about everything. And so I started. I was an engineering major in school.
Okay.
I was really great with numbers and loved it, puzzles and problem solving. But that really wasn't for me. I wanted something that was a little bit more front of the house or engaging, and so I became a banker. And so that was really my first job out of undergrad was a banker, and lived in New York City and learned a ton at a young age. And so the firm that I worked for had invested in several suppliers to Starbucks, and we really, really loved the specialty coffee industry. And that was, right around early 2000s. And so in 2003, I decided that it was time to leave banking, and I got into the coffee business on the mainland.
Sure.
And that was sort of that jump from engineering to banking to being an entrepreneur.
But then the leap to Hawaii, though. See, that's the one that people always mystifies people. You're in the business.
Right.
So how'd that happen?
Sure. So I think it was one of those. I think early on we saw a lot of the trend in food, especially specialty food, was talking about sustainability and traceability. And what better way to create a brand, but around ultimate sustainability and traceability here. And Hawaii is the only place in the United States where you grow coffee. So we wanted to have a coffee company that we said, was the best in the world at doing farm to cup coffee.
Right.
You take old, great business book of Good to Great by Jim Collins, and
right.
you got to be the best in the world at something, no matter how small the niche you describe it. And so we wanted to be the best or the leading farm to cup coffee company in the world, and we felt like we could do it from Hawaii.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, again,
so that's what drove that move. So that was, 4 years in the coffee business on the mainland, and then moved here in 2008 to really get, kind of that Kona coffee angle to the specialty coffee industry. It was evolving around the world, really huge changes in the coffee business from 2008 to 2000, and to this day. So.
Right. So you had to be nimble, and I suppose that experience with the coffee business, and now seeing the pandemic that happened, you had to be a bit adroit and adept at your business acumen, or else you could. This was a challenging year, and it still is challenging. Talk us through a little bit about how your operation, again, all of us, most of it in Hawaii, is somehow dependent upon the hospitality industry in some way, but how have you been able to, are you diversified? Are you, how have you sort of been able to stabilize everything in the midst of this, and maybe just kind of walk us through if
Sure.
Those scary moments, I guess, as all this stuff started happening.
Yeah, I mean, it was scary for certain. I think, it wasn't just Hawaiian Host, it was the entire state. We've had, the worst economy of all 50 states in the U.S. It's, unemployment's bad here. The GDP of Hawaii was down almost greater than every other state. So I think, we had to look at it. Unfortunately, we had to make a lot of hard choices. But the two things that when people ask that question that I talk about is, we really needed a team that was agile and was really, had a lot of grit or perseverance in them. And so those are the people that we wanted on the team going through this. As a leader, I tried to exemplify agility, willing to make, because if you recall going through this, I mean, every 2 weeks, the governor would issue a new emergency order. And it was like, oh, throw out the last one, pivot, right. Change. Here come the tourists. Nope, the tourists aren't coming. Nope, and start and stop. And so it's super difficult.
Business relies on a sort of a bit of steady reliability of we expect this to happen this next month. We expect this to happen this next month, even into the years. You've planned this whole plan out that you have, and then all of a sudden the whole thing's broken.
Yeah, right. People sit down and they'll do 5-year strategic plans. Well, throw that out the window. You were talking about 3-month strategic plans
right.
A year ago. And so we had taken our team and broken it down really into, we kind of, it was new for everybody, but we looked at all the ways that we could do something well with being agile and having this idea of perseverance. And McKinsey, which is an amazing, global consultancy, sort of broke things down and said, hey, we could go with 4 teams internally. And so we broke down to these 4 teams called the 4 Ds. Okay. We had discovery, we had development, we had decision making and delivery. And so we put people on these teams. And so the discovery were the people that were saying, okay, you guys got to be on every government order, global research, you got to be the team telling us what's going on. And then we had to have the sort of the creative team that was saying, okay, what could we change quickly? So for us, for example, we overhauled 3 websites in a period of about 4 months because we felt like e-commerce was a way that a Hawaii company could survive.
Great pivot.
And our e-commerce business was up, 400% once we launched these new websites. And then we had the decision team. So, okay, there was websites, there was, a new type of chocolate, other new products we could make. How much should we, shrink the team? Should we furlough them? Should we, make permanent layoffs or adjustments? And so that was sort of the decision team. And then we finally had the delivery team, right? That was the team that was going to execute. You can make all these things, but if you don't have the executors, nothing's going to get done. And so I think we all worked together really well. We've survived. Certainly wasn't easy. But now all of a sudden, I think we're companies that were flexible and came up with new products and new vision of who they were. I think now we have a chance at, being a better company coming out of this pandemic that we were, pre-pandemic. And the people on our team are really, we've we now ultimately trust each other, the ones that are, with us. We've hired a few new skill sets that we didn't have before.
Right.
So the pandemic allowed us to go hire a great technology team and a great digital team that, honestly, we just didn't have, in early 2020. So
sure.
Certainly good for us. Right now, we're excited about the future.
Well, yeah, and that the challenge is to be that adept in the 4Ds. That was an amazing, expression of way. I mean, when that team came in and sort of outlined your next steps, did suddenly all this this makes perfect sense. Why hadn't we thought about this? Or did they? I mean, you'd already been doing parts of it, or how do you adopt when someone comes in and says, "Hey, you got to change everything," and it has to be a really flexible team to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I would say is the velocity of change was huge. So
right.
Of course we were looking at, well, we should have more digital capability, be more tech focused. We knew the websites needed to get, updated or overhauled. What happened is we just said, hey, when you're on the balance, on that line of falling to nothing, you do things a lot faster, and so you just got to go for it. And that's where those, the two websites came from. We launched innovation. Like, one of the things we realized in the pandemic was that everybody thought Hawaiian Host and Mauna Loa were two brands that were equally balanced between tourism and locals. I think what we learned is, and sometimes you learn things through downtimes, we learned that we were a sharing brand. So even for locals, they were not picking up a box and just plowing through a box of our chocolates. The format in a box says, I'm a gift, I'm sharing it. So locals love buying our product, but they bought it because they were going to a barbecue. They bought it because they were getting together for graduations. They bought it because they were going to Vegas.
Right.
And we learned that we needed to change pack types. So then we've got a whole new line of products coming out that it's more in a share bag or a stand-up bag where you could eat two pieces.
Here we go.
Put it back.
Jelly bellies right here. But we need something that says Hawaiian Host here, so I can go grab it down at the local, Aloha gas station, and bam, grab one, and that's a different. Okay, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. So now you can walk into Long's, or you can walk into Tamura's, or you can walk into Foodland, and we've got bags like that instead of just boxes.
Right.
And so that was our number one. Through the pandemic, that was the product that became our number one seller, because that was a format that said, eat me, not share me.
Yeah, grab and go, because and you had to do that because of pandemic specific, but you don't want to say, hey, we've got pandemic safe candy, It just doesn't have the same ring, right?
That doesn't have the same marketing ring. So, and then we came out with, Mauna Loa introduced a brand new plant-based ice cream, or non-dairy ice cream. So we've got a macadamia nut milk ice cream, because again, Mauna Loa, we're not sharing just a bag of macadamias or a special occasion nut. We wanted to create everyday use. So if you go into any grocery store now here, you'll see there's 6 flavors out of Mauna Loa non-dairy ice cream made from macadamia nut milk. And so that was conceived and launched during COVID. It was also a product that we could put into the mainland. So we've got it in about 1,500 grocery stores on the mainland, which helps diversify our revenue out of Hawaii.
Well, I was going to ask that. Mainland, how about international markets? Does China like Hawaiian chocolates? I mean, how do you, is this the next place for you to sort of engage? How do you plan to do that?
Yeah, internationally, people love our chocolates. The chocolates are sold in over 30 countries around the world. Japan's obviously the number one market, but, Korea, Singapore, China, Philippines, Dubai. So our product is sold everywhere, but again, it was the pack type. So it's taken a little while longer to change the pack type. I think we just introduced a new product into Korea and Taiwan. It was a matcha covered macadamia. We did a collaboration in Japan with Itoen, which is a green tea brand that everybody knows here in Hawaii. They make iced green tea. Well, we did a collaboration in Japan where we made an Itoen matcha covered macadamia nut. So we certainly tried to pivot, whereas again, not about gifting, but about self-consumption.
Well, and tell us about this. You said, well, we've got partners. As you've, this thing fluctuates. It's like an accordion when you have a supply chain. All of a sudden, something stops, the whole thing goes crashing into the group ahead, like when you're in a big line. And then when you try and get going again, there's a big gap. And so, how did you manage through that during this period?
Well, that's
Your
today.
partners,
That's actually that's our number one issue, right? I mean, David, you hit it on nail on the head. Right now, we could be selling more stuff if it wasn't for supply chain issues.
Okay.
We went from carrying very little inventory, raw goods or finished goods,
Just in time sort of manufacturing, right?
and now all of a sudden it's like, that's a challenge of being in Hawaii. Just in time isn't just in time. It's just in time as soon as somebody can deliver something to a dock and ship it to Hawaii and get it off the dock and then put it away. So, when we hit go here in Hawaii, we're 2 to 3 weeks, slower than everybody else because of the transport issues. The docks in Los Angeles are having horrible time with throughput of container transit. They've got ships just sitting outside the port of Long Beach waiting. You had COVID outbreaks on the docks, so that was not helpful.
Sure.
Manufacturing the raw chocolate that we use, which comes from the mainland. Those plants all have lower throughputs due to COVID spacing inside the plant, so their output is a lot less than it would be. It's getting better. So we're getting better, but like you said, it's that train, and you start the locomotive, but the car at the end takes a long time to sort of get going.
Right.
Unfortunately, Hawaii is that car at the end because of our geographic location.
Sure. So you have to sort of assemble your entire assembly line, as it comes in, and then start manufacturing, and then wait for the next little bit of stuff come in. Well, we can't start that run because we've got, we don't have that match sugar left or whatever. So your team must have to. How is the digital also upgrades maybe in your throughputs as far as manufacturing? Have they been, has that sort of you've had to tighten that up, or is that something you're looking at as well?
Yeah, I think we've certainly tried to tighten up our forecasting. I think that's now important because that's, in your safety stock. That's certainly one thing that I think going forward, we've spent money on digital as it relates to people and digital as it relates to e-commerce. But I think that's the next big thing we're going to focus on is better data and planning resources internally. So I think, we'll see in 2022 and 23, I think we're going to focus a lot of capital spending on making sure we've got better systems and better data.
Yeah, because of all the challenges that you have to track so much stuff, and if you're missing this item or that item, and days turn into weeks, and that's some of the challenge with Hawaii, being a little bit slower just because of the geographic nature and those different things. So hats off to you, and it sounds like things are just moving in the right direction for you. Now, where do you see yourself out here? Again, you've a little bit of stability. Hopefully we get these passports out here and everybody's getting vaccinated and we're moving on. Where do you see, you're forecasting as you're doing your best, prognosticating? Where do you think you're seeing things here in the next year or two?
Yeah, I think Hawaii has got a very promising next 12 months ahead of it. It's a place that people feel comfortable coming. It's inside the United States. It is people unlike other recessions, in this one, people are exiting with more money than they came in. Many people, not everybody, certainly, but many people, they just didn't spend any money for 12 months.
Sure.
So, you've got people with, housing values didn't decrease. If anything, they went up. Right. Savings accounts increased. If you look at deposits on hand, in banks, that they've increased, not decreased. The use of credit cards has decreased. You have stimulus checks coming. You've got all kinds of programs the federal government have put in place. So with all that, I think spending could be very good by domestic travel. If you're dependent on Japanese travelers or foreign travelers to Hawaii, I think that's going to be another 9 months before you really see any sort of they're not as far ahead on vaccination. There's all kinds of international travel rules and how do you regulate international travel with whether it's post tracking of quarantines, testing, vaccine passports. So I do think that's going to take some time to recover. But I do think there's a good, strong push. Summertime should be fantastic for the visitor industry. I think the biggest thing to get back is, it was good that schools are finally back in. We finally have our full team together. I think, it's been a tremendous challenge for everybody. Working women have really, really, suffered a little bit of a setback here in that.
Agreed.
They've had two jobs. They've had to go to work from home, and then they've also had to become a home teacher, figuring out schedule, keeping kids focused on remote or distance learning. And it was really unfair of us as a society to ask them to do that. So
right.
We need schools to go back to full-time studies. We need after-school programs to come back. And then I feel like, Hawaii companies will really, be at full force again.
Yeah, right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was a challenge for parents and workers because we had to go home, and none of us, it was tough enough with the teachers and the kids going to school to keep them up to speed and keeping them going and making sure their stuff was, but now and making sure they're online and that they're being polite in the classrooms and things like that. There's no way we can monitor all of this that's happening. And thank goodness to the teachers and thank goodness for everybody but I think we'd like to have this year over with and this pandemic all over with, and we can get back to seeing each other again. And
yeah.
And we appreciate, and as a strong business leader, we want to thank you for coming on the Hawaii Boss podcast and sharing some of these, awesome things that you folks have been doing, really technical type of stuff, real business at cutting edge of trying to address these issues. So we appreciate it, Ed. And before we let you go, though, we loosen up a little bit.
Okay.
I got to ask a couple of questions as we loosen up. When was the last time you wore a necktie?
Last time I wore a necktie was December 2019. When we go to Tokyo for work and see our team there, we always suit up. So I'm probably in a suit 5 days a week in Tokyo.
Okay, that's just part of the standard. You can't bring aloha with you and just let and it's okay. I guess
I think you can get away with aloha in the summer in Japan, but December in Japan is they call it cool biz. You can wear it in the summer, but in the winter it's still suits and still madmen.
Sure. Yeah, well, you'll have to come back and tell us some stories about that for sure. Now you've been here for a little bit, and macadamia nut. Now all this. Do you have a favorite one of your flavors of those 6 flavors that you guys are putting out now? Macadamia.
Of the ice cream.
Yeah.
Of the ice cream, I love our Rocky Road to Hana. You gotta try it.
Rocky Road to Hana. That's good. That's good. Man, that's okay. And so, what stores can we find that in?
Foodland, Safeway, Long's, Whole Foods. Where else? Those are the big ones. Yeah, Times, Don Quixote.
Okay, well, everybody get in there and get your ice cream for the weekend because, this isn't just for to share with your guests, but this is also to get some in your own fridge. And if you have the pint size, you can sneak one in your own, into the room and eat one at night, and no one's gonna bother you, right? So we just are so glad we had the Candyman, Mr. Ed Schultz here with us. And one more thing is there someone that stood out to you during this last year that you thought in Hawaii that really, really did some things that well, and that you saw that, deserve some accolades that maybe haven't had a chance to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I think, here in Hawaii, I think that, the two business leaders that I think did a great job. I think Peter Ho and Ray Vera were on it locally, trying to find balanced solutions of, protecting public safety while keeping our economy going. I think Pier 2 is just a fantastic, private vaccination sort of operation.
Mm-hmm.
Really world class of what they were able to get done. So I think, those two, I think locally just stood out to me. On a national scale, I think one of the best leaders out there is a guy, Ed Bastian, who's the CEO of Delta Airlines.
Okay.
And it very, tough industry, but really pulled it together. People want to go to work and support, and great job with everything from diversity and inclusion to running a world-class airline. Making it so that people, even pre-pandemic, wanted to fly Delta Airlines. Customer satisfaction and great service. So I think he is a leader in the United States. He's done a great job balancing sort of capitalism with profit with a purpose.
Sure, and I think Hawaii, wants to embody that and wants to invite companies that come over here and make sure that they've got that in their mind, and it's come here to share, not just come here to take, and certainly, you know, Delta is a quality group, you know, flying back and forth to the mainland, Salt Lake City. I've lived there, used to live in Salt Lake City, and they're, you know, big hub there for those folks. And
Yeah.
but anyway, Ed, you've been a pleasure, and I hope that as your online sales and your ice cream sales keep going up, and we got to take a look out there for those little bags of those grab and go candies, so we can get Hawaiian Host right in our car, right where we need it when we're driving or we're bored as heck. We can just anyway, sir. Again, thanks for being on the show, and aloha.
Aloha. Thank you for having me.
You bet. Take care, sir.
Make sure to subscribe to Hawaii Boss and follow us on social media at Hawaii Boss Podcast at the links in the description. We'll see you soon in the boss's office.